Media Monitoring Africa are keeping an eye on selected media's coverage of the run-up to the local government elections. They're also keeping track of whether political parties and their candidates are represented fairly and without bias, among other things. Program Manager Lister Namumba-Rikhotso, who is responsible for monitoring research and analysis, joins us now to give us insight into this week's media coverage. Good evening to you, and thank you so much for your time tonight. Let's talk about the issues that you would say were considered a priority by the media between the 27th of September and the 3rd of October.
Hi, thank you so much for having me on the program. So between that period, in that period that you've mentioned, so we had a 7-day monitoring period, and among the big stories that we monitored or we saw reported in the media were mostly the political parties' manifesto launches. And so you find that even the political parties that launched their manifestos the previous week, the previous monitoring period, still received coverage. But then, in particular, the African National Congress, the Good Party, IFP, as well as COP, received much more coverage during the monitoring period. And then we also had another big story that we had was the Digital Vibes investigation report that was released, and where political parties were talking about how they would want those implicated in that report to be criminally investigated. We also had the death of Swane councillor, the ANC Swale councillor, who was gunned down or was shot over 20 times, according to media reports. And then also the IC electoral code of conduct that was where political parties were signing. So those were just some of the big stories that we had during the monitoring period.
When I listen to what you're saying and looking at your research, it also looks like, the ANC, the DA, the presidency, the EFF, as well as the Good Party are in the top 5. And even earlier today, we heard a focus on smaller parties at the manifesto launch of the Freedom Front Plus, as they were talking about the importance of the smaller parties and the role that they play. How would you say the media has fared in the covering of some of these smaller parties?
Actually, the smaller parties are not getting much coverage. The coverage that the small parties are getting is not enough at all. So if you look at our data, you find that the 4 political parties, that's the EFF, the DA, the Good Party, and the ANC, have a combined coverage share of about 44%, leaving 56 to be shared among the over 320 political parties or so that are contesting the 2021 local government elections. So when you look at that coverage share that the 4 political parties are getting, that's quite a lot, and it means that the smaller parties are not getting much coverage. And we have to bear in mind that when we're looking at the people who are speaking in coverage, we're not just looking at the political parties, we're also looking at other sources. So it means that for the 56% that I mentioned that was left for the other smaller political parties is not even enough, because we have to, the other entities, like I said, have to speak. And it means that much of the coverage is going to these 4 political parties, with the ANC getting the biggest coverage share at 24% during the monitoring period, followed by the DA at 11%.
I wonder then, because around this time, it's typical to see an increase in stories that are relating to elections. There could be service delivery related, there could be manifesto related, but are we telling the right kind of stories as the media?
Well, if you look at our research, you'll see that service delivery. So I believe when you're doing the local government elections, should be mostly about service delivery, because these are local government elections at the end of the day. But you find that the topic service delivery is only receiving a coverage share of 3%, and that's the from the top 5, that's the topic that's receiving the least amount of coverage. And then you have political party, much of the coverage focused on political party manifestos. So whilst this changes from week to week, we're still having a situation where topics like service delivery, crime, unemployment, inequality, those kind of things are not receiving as much coverage share as they should, considering the type of elections that South Africa is having.
So from what you're saying, pardon me, from what you're saying, then it sounds like if there isn't a lot of service delivery stories and there's a lot of talk around manifestos, then there isn't a holding of officials to account enough, because they could say the same thing that they said in the previous local government election, and because there isn't a lot of stories coming forward when it comes to service delivery, it's difficult to then track what they've done and what they're saying now.
Yeah, true. But then when you look at political party manifestos on its own as a topic, I mean, there's not so much, there's nothing wrong with having it as a topic, dominating coverage, especially during the week when most political parties are launching their manifestos. But then when you dig deep and look at what type of stories these are, you find that most of these media stories are event-based. So you just have a media house going to report that, oh, the NCA launch their manifestos without interrogating what actually is in those manifestos and what it means for the electorate. So reporting on political parties on its own, it's okay, but then the media can do much more than just reporting, on the event, but actually interrogating what is actually contained in these manifestos that are being launched, and then we bring it down to service delivery so that even that can receive an adequate coverage share, as well as the other topics that I just mentioned before. So the media needs to move from event-based reporting to investigative reporting, and also just what it means for the electorate, because what I would imagine if I'm voting, I would want to know, if I'm going to vote for this party, I want to know their their manifestos. What does it mean for me? Am I okay with what they're promising to do? Is it the same thing they promised the last time? Such stories are missing from the media, unfortunately. So there's a huge gap there.
Another gap that I see tabled in your report are the voices of women, and this could either be in a form of their candidacy and the difficulties they face thereof, but also women talking about the election in and itself.
Yeah, so most of our elections monitoring analysis reveal that women hardly speak in coverage. It's actually almost always around 20% voice share for women, and this has to be shared between the female electorate as well as the female politicians. They hardly speak in the news, and even when it's the media is reporting on an issue that mostly affects women in South Africa, an issue such as gender-based violence, for instance, you find that it's the males who are speaking. We've done research on this, and we'll be releasing the report soon. But you find that even where women are supposed to be speaking, they're not speaking, and most of the coverage that is done, the political party candidates or the candidates that are contesting in the elections, most of them are males. So I do not know how many females will be contesting this year's elections, but then the few that are there, I believe, should be getting an equitable amount of coverage, to them, so that we just don't have males speaking at over 70% or 70% or 80%. That just perpetuates, I believe, the stereotype that women are not important sources, or they're not important enough to speak on issues of national importance, and that stereotype unfortunately cannot be perpetuated continuously, because it becomes dangerous then for females, or even just for the country and for democracy.
I wonder how the picture will look like when we speak again soon. Lister, certainly hoping that it would have improved. Thank you so much for your time this evening. That was Program Manager Lister Namumba-Rikhotso, who was painting a picture for us that, really a lot of women are not being interviewed and they're not really talking when it comes to issues around the election, and also not given a chance to talk about their candidacy. There's not enough voices there, and this is research done by Media Monitoring Africa, as they're keeping a close eye on select media's coverage on the run-up to the local government elections.